What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors reaches his breaking point on live television? What happens when a man known for humor, charm, and effortless likability finally snaps after years of pent-up frustration? Today, we're diving into the moment Danny Devito absolutely lost it on The View. A moment so shocking, so unexpected, that even the hosts were left frozen in their seats. And trust me, you have never seen anything like what unfolded that morning. The tension wasn't just high, it was suffocating, thick enough to slice through with a knife. And what Joy Behar said next, it would leave millions speechless. Before we get into the chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory on overtime. At first, everything seemed ordinary, routine, predictable. Danny Devito, Hollywood icon and crowd favorite, was scheduled for a simple guest appearance on The View. He was there to promote his newest project, nothing controversial, nothing political, nothing that could possibly lead to conflict. He arrived in his usual upbeat mood, exchanging warm greetings with the crew, cracking jokes with the audience, and taking his place at the table with that familiar mischievous smile. Coffee mug in hand, legs swinging casually beneath the table, he was the picture of ease. For decades, Danny had been the same lovable figure, quick-witted, sharp, and wonderfully unfiltered, but always good-natured. He had handled red carpets, interviews, controversies, and Hollywood drama for over 40 years without ever losing control. So no one, absolutely no one, expected the storm that was about to unfold. Joy Behar sat across from him, leaning forward with the confident smirk she often wore when she sensed an opportunity for a soundbite. She opened the interview with what seemed like an innocent enough question. At first, so Danny. She began, voice dripping with sarcastic warmth, "You've been in Hollywood for decades now. You've seen it all. Tell us, what do you think about all these young actors today complaining about everything? Back in your day, people just did their jobs without all the drama, right?" The tone of her question immediately set the audience whispering. It wasn't playful. It wasn't lighthearted. It carried an edge sharp, judgmental, mocking. It wasn't about Danny. It was about stirring the pot. Joy had been doing this for years, but this time she aimed in the wrong direction. Danny shifted slightly in his chair, a tiny movement, but one noticeable enough to show discomfort. His eyebrows arched just a fraction, and his usually cheerful expression dimmed into something more cautious. He didn't want a fight, that was clear. He wasn't there to condemn anyone or feed into the generational feud Joy was trying to craft. But Joy didn't care about that, she wanted a reaction. "Well, Joy," Danny began, choosing his words carefully, "I think every generation faces their own challenges. Things change, the business changes, and people. Young actors, old actors, everyone's just trying to make it through." It was a perfectly reasonable response. Balanced, mature, but Joy wasn't satisfied. She cut him off mid-sentence, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Danny," she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "You're telling me these kids aren't soft, that they're not constantly whining about long hours, tough directors, emotional strain. I mean, you guys back then had it rough. You didn't complain. You got the job done." Danny blinked. The audience murmured again. Even the other hosts shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in the air. They knew Joy was trying to drag him into a controversial narrative, trying to make him criticize an entire generation of actors just to get a juicy clip. Danny leaned back slowly, his posture no longer relaxed. "Joy," he said, "I don't think you're being fair. People today are more open about mental health, working conditions, burnout. Things we didn't even talk about back then. It's not whining, it's awareness." But Joy was relentless. "So you're saying the old Hollywood actors weren't aware? That they were just suffering in silence?" She raised an eyebrow dramatically. "Come on, Danny, you know better." Danny inhaled deeply through his nose. His jaw tightened. For the first time, the audience saw something they rarely witnessed from him. Irritation, real irritation. His eyes narrowed slightly, his usually playful demeanor replaced by something sharper. "Joy," he said slowly, "what I'm saying is that things evolve, and maybe we shouldn't mock people for speaking up about things that matter to them." Joy was undeterred. In fact, she seemed almost thrilled by the tension she was creating. "But don't you think Hollywood has gotten a little weak?" she pressed. "All these protests, demands, walkouts. It's like everyone wants special treatment. Whoopi winced visibly. Sunny shifted uncomfortably. Even Sarah pressed her lips together, trying to signal Joy to stop, but Joy kept going, her voice growing increasingly pointed, increasingly provocative, and that's when it happened. Danny set his mug down with a soft clink. But the sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent studio. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked onto Joy. "Joy," he said, his voice low but powerful, "you have no idea what you're talking about." The audience went dead silent. Danny continued, his voice rising steadily, the years of pent-up frustration finally breaking through his usually calm exterior. "You sit here and act like Hollywood was some paradise back then. It wasn't. It was brutal. People weren't staying quiet because they were stronger. They were staying quiet because they were afraid. Afraid of losing their jobs, their careers, their reputations." Joy blinked, stunned. Danny pressed on. "You think we didn't struggle. You think we didn't suffer. You think we didn't want to speak up. We just didn't have the space, the culture, the support." He pointed slightly toward the audience. "These young actors you're mocking, they're doing something we couldn't. They're changing things, and instead of dismissing them, maybe we should respect that." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Danny wasn't finished. "And for you to sit here," he said firmly, "and pretend like you understand what any of us went through, old or young, is insulting." The studio erupted in shocked murmurs. Joy's face went pale, then red, then pale again. No one, not a single person, had expected Danny Devito to snap like this, but he had, and he wasn't apologizing. "These young actors today," Danny continued, trying to stay patient, "they're dealing with social media, constant scrutiny, mental health issues that weren't even acknowledged when I started out. It's a whole different world. Oh, please." Joy scoffed, cutting him off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Mental health, social media pressure. Give me a break. When I was coming up, we didn't have safe spaces and participation trophies. We had real problems, real struggles. These kids today are just soft." A noticeable shift went through the room. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances, fully aware that Joy was venturing into dangerous territory. Danny's jaw tightened, the muscles in his face flexing as he tried to maintain composure. He leaned back slightly, but the calm in his voice was beginning to crack. "I wouldn't call anxiety and depression being soft, Joy," he said firmly. "I think that's a pretty dangerous way to look at things." Joy leaned forward, elbows on the table, her voice dripping with condescension as she pushed harder. "Danny, come on, you're from New Jersey. You know what real tough is. These Hollywood brats crying about their feelings while making millions of dollars. It's embarrassing. They should be grateful instead of complaining all the time. Grateful." Danny repeated, his voice sharper now, his eyes narrowing. "Joy, success doesn't immunize anyone from human emotions or mental health struggles. Some of the most successful people I've ever known have fought the hardest battles, with depression, anxiety, addiction, you name it." "That's exactly the problem," Joy shot back, raising her voice as the tension climbed. "Everyone's a victim now. Everyone's got some little sob story about their struggles. What happened to personal responsibility? What happened to just dealing with your problems instead of making them everyone else's issue?" The studio audience was dead silent. No laughter, no murmurs, no applause, just heavy anticipation. Sarah Haynes's eyes widened with alarm. Sunny shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and even Whoopi looked like she was deciding whether to intervene. The temperature in the studio seemed to drop as Danny's grip tightened around his coffee mug. His knuckles turned white, and the famous mischievous grin that usually never left his face had vanished entirely. "Personal responsibility," Danny repeated slowly, almost whispering. Then he sat up straighter, the change in his body language unmistakable. "You want to talk about personal responsibility, Joy?" Joy crossed her arms smugly. "Absolutely." Danny lowered his mug to the table with a soft click, a sound that reverberated through the tense space like a warning. He turned his entire body toward Joy, his eyes locked onto hers with a focus that made even the cameras zoom in instinctively. "Okay," he said calmly, "let's talk about it." The silence in the room thickened. Joy blinked, suddenly unsure of where he was going, but still wearing a thin veil of arrogance on her face. She thought she could steer the conversation. She thought she could push him without consequence, but Danny Devito was no pushover. And for the first time that morning, he wasn't masking his emotions. "You sit here." Danny began slowly, calling young actors weak, mocking people for acknowledging mental health struggles, dismissing anxiety like it's some imaginary condition. "And you think that's personal responsibility?" Joy opened her mouth, but Danny didn't give her a chance. "No, Joy," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "Personal responsibility is recognizing when you're struggling. It's having the courage to admit you need help. It's facing your demons instead of burying them like people used to be forced to do." Joy tried to interrupt, but Danny's voice overpowered hers. "And yes, Joy," he added, "even people making millions of dollars can be suffering. Money doesn't fix trauma. Fame doesn't fix depression. Having a nice home doesn't magically erase anxiety." Joy rolled her eyes dramatically, but the audience didn't laugh. No one moved. The air was heavy, electric, waiting. "And you know what else?" Danny continued. "Personal responsibility doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It doesn't mean toughing it out until you destroy yourself. That old mentality, your real problems, real struggles mentality. It's why generations before us suffered in silence. It's why people broke down, self-destructed, burned out, lost everything." Joy swallowed, visibly tense. For the first time, her confidence faltered. Danny leaned forward, his voice quieter but dead, serious. "You think speaking up makes people weak? No, it makes them brave. It means they're trying to break the cycle, trying to make the industry a healthier place than the one we grew up in." Danny Joy started, but he cut her off again, sharper this time. "No, Joy, let me finish." She froze. Danny continued, his voice deepening with conviction. "Mental health isn't a trend, it isn't a buzzword, and it sure isn't something to be mocked. If your generation had been allowed to talk about it, really talk about it, maybe fewer people would have suffered, maybe fewer would have turned to substances, to self-destruction, to silence." Joy's face was flushed now, but she didn't dare speak. "You call these kids soft," Danny said. "I call them strong, stronger than we were allowed to be." A ripple went through the audience, quiet, breathless. No applause, no gasps, just stunned silence. Danny leaned back, the intensity still in his eyes. "So if you want to talk about personal responsibility, Joy, maybe start by taking responsibility for the way you use that platform of yours." Joy's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The other hosts sat frozen, stunned at the sight of Danny Devito, the lovable comic legend, dismantling Joy Behar on her own show with calm but devastating precision. "These young actors need to stop whining," Joy continued, her voice rising with smug certainty, "and start taking responsibility for their own happiness. Stop blaming society. Stop blaming the industry. Stop blaming everyone but themselves." Danny slowly set his coffee mug down with a deliberate thud, the sound echoing across the tense studio like a warning bell. He leaned forward slightly, his expression darkening. "So tell me something, Joy," he said quietly, but with a razor-sharp edge. "When a young actor takes their own life because they can't handle the pressure, that's just lack of personal responsibility to you." Joy didn't even pause. "If someone can't handle the pressure of being rich and famous," she said flippantly, "then maybe they shouldn't have chosen that career path. There are plenty of people out there who would kill for those opportunities." The words landed like poison in the air. A couple of audience members sucked in their breath. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting from Joy to Danny, but none dared to speak. The studio lights seemed suddenly hotter, harsher, as if even they could sense the tension ripping through the moment. "That's interesting, Joy," Danny said slowly. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes just before an explosion. "So you think mental health is just a choice? You think depression is just people being weak?" Joy crossed her arms. "I think people need to toughen up," she replied with a dismissive shrug. "My generation didn't have time for all this emotional hand-holding. We dealt with real problems." "Real problems?" Danny repeated, his eyebrows rising in disbelief. He nodded slowly, as if he were trying to keep himself from snapping. "All right, let's talk about that. Tell me, Joy, what real problems were you dealing with when you were starting out in comedy? What was so much harder about your experience than what young actors face today?" For the first time, Joy hesitated. Her confidence slipped, just for a fraction of a second, before she plastered on a strained smile. "Well, we didn't have all the resources these kids have today," she said defensively. "We didn't have therapy on every corner or support groups for everything under the sun. We just had to figure it out ourselves, right?" Danny said, his tone sharpening like a blade being honed. "You had to figure it out yourselves, and how did that work out for your generation, Joy? How many comedians from your era struggled with addiction? How many turned to alcohol, drugs, dangerous coping mechanisms? How many died too young because they were just figuring it out themselves?" "That's completely different," Joy snapped, her voice strained now. She waved her hand dismissively, as if brushing away reality. "Addiction is a disease. Mental health is just attitude." Danny froze. His eyes widened, slowly, dramatically, like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He leaned back slightly, his mouth parting in shock. "Did you just say mental health is just attitude?" He blinked. "Did those words actually come out of your mouth on national television?" A ripple of discomfort spread across the audience. The cameras zoomed in on Danny's face, capturing the gathering storm behind his eyes. The crew members behind the set exchanged glances, fully aware they were witnessing something explosive. But Joy, oblivious, or perhaps too stubborn to back down, decided to dig herself even deeper. "Yes," she said proudly. "Yes, I did say that, because it's true. Mental health is largely about your mindset, your attitude toward life. If you choose to be positive, if you choose to be grateful for what you have, you'll be happier. It's that simple." That was the moment Danny snapped. He stood up so suddenly that his chair scraped violently against the studio floor, producing a loud, ugly screech that made several people jump. The sudden movement startled the hosts, the audience, even the camera operators. "It's that simple," Danny repeated, his voice rising with unmistakable fury. "Joy, do you have any idea how ignorant you sound right now?" Joy's face went pale, then flushed a deep shade of red. "Ignorant?" she shot back, her voice higher than normal. "I'm ignorant for believing in personal responsibility and positive thinking." Danny pointed at her, not aggressively, but with the authority of someone who couldn't allow ignorance to go unchecked. "No, you're ignorant," he fired back, for dismissing the legitimate struggles of an entire generation. "You're ignorant for acting like depression is just some mindset problem that people can fix with good vibes. And you're ignorant for sitting on a national platform and spreading dangerous misinformation about topics you clearly know nothing about." Joy opened her mouth, but Danny kept going. The dam had burst. "You think mental health struggles mean someone's weak? Let me tell you something, Joy. Some of the strongest people in this world have fought battles you can't even imagine. Quietly, painfully, privately. And your attitude, your mocking, your outdated toughen-up mentality. It's the reason so many people stayed silent for so long." His voice thundered through the studio. "It's the reason people didn't seek help. It's the reason so many of your peers died too damn young." The room was dead silent. No movement, no whispers, no breathing. Even Joy had fallen silent, staring why. Died at Danny, stunned by the sheer force of his words. He wasn't finished. "Personal responsibility," he repeated, shaking his head. "Personal responsibility means recognizing when something is wrong and taking steps to address it. It means seeking help, speaking up, starting a conversation. What you're promoting isn't responsibility. It's denial. It's shame. It's the very mindset that destroyed lives for decades." Joy sat still, frozen, unable to respond. Danny leaned in, his voice low but fierce. "And if you're going to sit here and preach about something you clearly don't understand, then maybe you're the one who shouldn't be on this platform." The studio erupted, not in applause, but in stunned, breathless shock. The moment carried so much weight it felt like the entire room might crack under it, and the cameras captured every second. The producers were frantically signaling from behind the cameras. Wild gestures, desperate eye contact, urgent whispers into headsets. But it was painfully clear that nothing and no one could stop what was about to unfold. Danny Devito had crossed an invisible line, a point of no return, and Joy Behar, whether she realized it or not, had just struck the final match to an already smoldering fire. What had started as a tense conversation had now escalated into a live television confrontation, Unlike anything the view had ever seen, Danny's expression was no longer the playful, mischievous face audiences had grown to love over decades. Instead, he looked like a man who had been holding something in for far too long. Years of frustration, countless observations, unspoken truths building up like pressure beneath a volcano. And Joy had just tapped the fault line. "You know what, Joy?" Danny said, his voice cutting sharply through the stunned silence of the studio. He wasn't just speaking, he was projecting, his voice filling every corner of the room with a rawness and intensity that left even the production crew frozen in place. "I've been in this business for over 50 years, 5 decades. Do you understand how long that is? I've worked with hundreds of actors. Young, old, seasoned veterans, terrified newcomers. I've seen it all." He took a breath, the kind that trembles with emotion rather than fatigue. "I've seen the brightest talents destroy themselves," Danny continued, his voice now deeper, heavier, weighted with genuine sorrow. "People with gifts so extraordinary they could have changed the world, but they didn't get the chance because they believed exactly what you just said, that their pain wasn't real, that their fear was weakness, that their depression was just a bad attitude, that if they weren't smiling, weren't grateful every second of every day, then there was something wrong with them." Joy tried to cut him off, her voice suddenly smaller, less confident than before. "Danny, I think you're overreacting. This is overreacting." Danny's laugh was sharp, humorless, like broken glass scraping across concrete. It echoed in the stunned silence of the studio. "I'm overreacting." It wasn't a question, it was a challenge. He took a step forward, his eyes locked on Joy, and the entire audience seemed to collectively hold its breath. "You just told millions of viewers that mental health is an attitude problem," he said, each word delivered with surgical precision. "You told them that anxiety is weakness, that depression is just complaining, that people who struggle should toughen up or choose a different life. You dismissed the very real battles that millions of Americans, millions of people around the world, fight every single day, and I'm overreacting." Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, the panelist known for her quick comebacks and sharp tongue had nothing to say. Danny wasn't done. "You sit here at this table, day after day, talking about politics, culture, society, about the issues that shape people's lives, and you use that platform to tell those same people their suffering is imaginary, that their internal battles are excuses." His voice cracked slightly, not in weakness, but in something far more powerful. "Hurt, real human hurt. The number of people I've known personally," he continued, who smiled on set, cracked jokes, charmed entire nations, then went home and cried in the dark because they didn't know how to ask for help. "Joy, you don't even understand the damage words like yours can do." The studio remained dead silent. Even the sound operators, usually clicking buttons and adjusting audio levels, had paused mid-movement. On the faces of the other hosts, Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, there was a mixture of shock, discomfort, and something close to admiration. They knew Danny was saying things that needed to be said, even if the moment was spiraling into unprecedented chaos. "Danny, look." Joy tried again, her tone defensive but undeniably shaken. "I'm just saying people need to." But Danny cut her off, his voice firm. "People need compassion, Joy. People need understanding. People need to know their pain is valid, not something to be dismissed because it doesn't fit into your version of toughness. You think your generation had it harder? Fine. You survived your struggles. Good for you. But surviving something doesn't give you permission to mock the people still fighting." Joy blinked, visibly rattled. For the first time since the confrontation began, doubt flickered across her face. Danny exhaled slowly, steadying himself. But his next words were even more powerful. "You want to talk about real problems," he said. "Here's a real problem. Every time someone with a platform like yours tells the world mental health is just a mindset issue, someone out there believes it. Someone suffering stays silent. Someone decides they're too weak to ask for help. Someone won't call a friend, won't reach out, won't go to therapy because they think they're supposed to toughen up. And sometimes Joy, that silence kills them." Joy's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely shaken, as though the weight of what he was saying finally hit her. "And you want to call me overreacting?" Danny whispered, his voice almost trembling now. "No. I'm reacting exactly the way any decent human being should react, when someone spreads dangerous, dismissive nonsense about issues that cost people their lives. The camera cut to the audience, wide-eyed, unsettled, utterly captivated. No one moved. Finally, Danny turned to the rest of the panel, addressing them with a controlled calmness that contrasted sharply with the fire in his voice moments earlier. "You all know this isn't just an argument," he said. "This isn't about me. It's not even about Joy. It's about the millions of people watching right now who need to know that their struggles are valid, that they're not weak, that they're not broken, that they're human." For a long moment, no one spoke. Not the producers, not the hosts, not even Joy. The entire studio felt like it was holding its breath, suspended in a moment that was raw, unfiltered, and undeniably real. They do have advantages, they have resources, they have opportunities, but you know what else they have. Danny's voice cut through the air like a blade. They have people like you telling them their pain isn't real just because they're successful. They have talk, show hosts, commentators, and public figures minimizing their suffering because it doesn't match some arbitrary standard of who deserves compassion. The studio fell into a silence so complete it almost felt unnatural. Even the production crew, usually bustling around quietly behind the cameras, had stopped moving. Every eye in the room was locked on the two of them. "I never said their pain isn't real," Joy protested, but even she could hear the weakness in her own voice. It lacked the confidence she normally wielded so effortlessly. "You said mental health is just attitude," Danny reminded her, his eyes unwavering. "You said it's a choice. You said people need to toughen up. If that's not saying their pain isn't real, then what exactly is it saying?" Joy opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again, each attempt more clumsy than the last. She was cornered and she knew it. Every time she tried to clarify, she dug herself deeper. Every time she tried to soften her words, Danny threw her exact phrasing right back in her face. "I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one." She finally managed, retreating into the most predictable escape line in television history. But Danny shook his head slowly, firmly, decisively. "No," he said. "We're not going to agree to disagree. You don't get to hide behind that when the stakes are this high. This isn't a difference of opinion. This isn't two people debating which flavor of ice cream is better. This is a matter of basic human decency. This is about whether we continue spreading harmful stigma or whether we finally start showing compassion to people who are struggling." "I'm plenty compassionate," Joy snapped, her patience starting to fray, but even her retort lacked the bite she usually carried. "Really?" Danny's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "Is that what you call what happened here today, compassion? Because from where I'm standing, it looked an awful lot like judgment, like dismissal, like ignorance dressed up as tough love." On the other side of the table, the other hosts were frantically waving their hands at producers off camera. They wanted, desperately, for someone to pull the plug on the segment before the show crossed a line it could never come back from. But it was already too late. "You know what your problem is, Danny." Joy fired back, her voice rising again, trying to reclaim control. "You're so obsessed with being politically correct, with protecting everyone's feelings, that you can't accept reality. Some people are stronger than others. Some people can handle stress better. That's just the truth. And you know what your problem is, Joy." Danny shot back instantly, his voice sharp as a whip. "You think strength means suffering in silence. You think handling stress means pretending everything is fine. You think asking for help is weakness." He leaned forward, his words landing like thunder. "That's not strength, that's stupidity." Joy froze, her mouth fell open, genuinely stunned. She had been insulted before. She made a career out of being controversial. But being called stupid, bluntly and publicly, by a respected Hollywood legend on national television. "That hit a nerve. How dare you?" she gasped. "How dare I?" Danny repeated, stepping toward her just slightly. "What exactly am I not allowed to do here, Joy? How dare I call out dangerous rhetoric when I hear it? How dare I defend people who can't defend themselves? How dare I use my platform to speak up for mental health awareness instead of tearing it down? You're being incredibly disrespectful," Joy said, but her voice wasn't steady. It trembled just slightly, betraying insecurity she didn't want anyone to see. "I'm being honest," Danny said, not missing a beat. And sometimes honesty feels disrespectful when you're used to people nodding along and agreeing with you. But someone needs to say it. Someone needs to tell you that what you said today was wrong. Someone needs to tell you that your attitude toward mental health isn't just outdated, it's harmful. Joy folded her arms, defensive, but she didn't interrupt. She couldn't. Danny wasn't giving her an inch. You sit here every day on this show, he said, talking about politics, society, human rights, empathy, community. Yet when it comes to mental health, suddenly it's every person for themselves. Suddenly it's all about attitude. Suddenly the people who are struggling are weak. Joy's lips tightened, but she stayed quiet. Let me tell you something, Danny continued, his tone softer now but still unwavering. I've seen some of the strongest people alive break under pressure, not because they were weak, not because they weren't grateful, but because they were human, because mental health doesn't care how famous you are, or how rich you are, or how tough you think you're supposed to be. The studio audience was still silent, captivated, hanging on every word. Even the camera operators seemed frozen in place. And when someone with a platform like yours, Danny said, pointing gently but purposefully toward Joy, tells them their pain is just an attitude problem that can crush them, that can make someone stay silent. And silence, Joy. Silence destroys people. Joy swallowed hard, visibly shaken, but she still didn't speak. You may think you're being straightforward, Danny said quietly, but what you're really doing is telling people to shut up about their pain, to hide it, to bury it, to pretend everything's fine until they break. Joy looked down at the table, a small, subtle gesture, but one that spoke volumes. And I'm telling you, Danny said, finishing with a calm but heartbreaking certainty, that's not strength. That's tragedy disguised as toughness, and it's killing people. The set remained still. No music, no applause, no nervous chatter. Just the raw gravity of what had been said, hanging in the air.